down the divine employment terms that are laid out here. And these are the conditions of the teachings of Bishop David Oyedepo. It's this concept that your financial well-being isn't just about faith, but about a very specific kind of knowledge. We're going to follow this idea all the way from the problem it tries to solve to a moment of divine revelation, and then look at the real-world results that are said to prove it works. Okay, so let's just dive right into the central premise here. According to this teaching, the entire spectrum of your experience, from winning to losing, it all hangs on this one single thing: knowledge. It's not just one of the factors. It's presented as the absolute dividing line. And you can see it laid out really clearly here. The argument is that these big outcomes in life, like being prosperous versus being poor, aren't just random. Nope. They are the direct result of what you understand, or maybe what you don't understand, about what is supposedly already yours. So in this first section, we're going to idea that the biggest thing holding a believer back isn't that God is unwilling, but that the believer themselves is just ignorant of the provisions that have already been made for them. You know, the teaching uses this really powerful analogy to frame the problem. Just picture it: a president's son begging for change. It just feels wrong, doesn't it? It's a complete mismatch between who he is and what he's doing. And that's the exact contradiction that this whole framework is trying to fix.
And this quote, wow, it just hammers that point home. The argument is that a believer's true identity is one of rulership, of authority. So the experience of begging, of being in a state of lack, is seen as totally unnatural. It goes against the very design of who you're supposed to be.
Now, this is a crucial point. The teaching redefines the word perish. It's not talking about losing your salvation here, not at all. It means that someone can already in their heavenly bank account, so to speak. Which, of course, leads to a massive question. If believers are meant to be rulers, why do so many feel like they're living like beggars? Let's take a look at the diagnosis that's presented in the source material. You know, there is no pulling punches here. The argument is incredibly direct. The responsibility is put right on the individual. It suggests the main fight isn't with some external enemy, but it's an internal one, against what you don't know. The problem isn't out there, it's an information gap on the inside. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Now we get to the personal story that's presented as the absolute turning point for this entire way of thinking. It's a story about how one simple question led to a divine encounter that basically shaped everything that came after. Absolutely key. It kicks off with a call to ministry, which then brings up a very real, practical problem based on his own values. And the search for an answer wasn't just a casual prayer. It's described as an active, 2-week-long quest that ended with a direct, supernatural encounter. And it all came down to this one simple but profound question: who pays me? I mean, think about it. If you're going into a ministry without a traditional salary, without an organization backing you, you've got to wonder, if I'm not supposed to beg, where does the money? Wasn't going to be a church or a board or the people in the pews? No. The employer and the one responsible for the paycheck was God himself. And that changes everything about who you depend on. So that brings us to the really practical side of things. If God is your employer, then what are the terms of the contract, right? Let's break down the divine employment terms that are laid out here. And these are the conditions of the deal. They're pretty radical. The instructions are crystal clear. You have to be completely dependent on your divine employer. No personal savings as a safety net, no asking people for money, just 100% focus on the work. And the promise? You'll get paid. It's guaranteed. This breaks it down even further, and it draws a really clear line in the sand. It basically creates a firewall between the minister and the congregation when it comes to money. You're sent to the people to serve them. You're not sent by them like an employee. And because of that, their finances are not your problem. That's handled directly by the one who sent you. Okay, so that's the principle. But what about the results? After operating this way for over 40 years, does it actually work? Well, the source provides some pretty specific metrics as tangible proof that this covenant, this binding agreement, delivers. First up, just look at the sheer scale of the operation. We are talking about a workforce of over 30,000 people. And get this, they're apparently planning to hire another 20,000. This kind of massive scale is presented as direct evidence that the system of provision isn't just working, it's growing like crazy, all without typical fundraising. And this table gives us even more proof points. The source claims they have never, not once, missed a salary payment. It also says they've never sought aid from any other nation, and they don't do those high-pressure pledge drives. And all this is happening while they're expanding at an incredible rate. I mean, planting over 600 churches in a single month? That's a lot. And then there's this one, very specific detail, the number 27. This apparently represents the number of consecutive years all the way back to 1999 that the ministry's headquarters has gone without a single power outage from the public grid. It's presented as another real-world sign of a higher level of provision. You know, this one quote really sums up the entire philosophy. It frames human wealth as wretched or basically insignificant compared to the divine source. The point is, God doesn't need our money. It's the other way around. We need his endless resources to refill our own. So when you put it all together, what this explainer really shows is a perspective that draws a direct, straight line from knowledge of divine principles to tangible, real-world results. It really leaves us with this final question to think about. In this framework, are faith, knowledge, and prosperity just three separate things, or are they inextricably linked parts of a single, functioning system?
Bird of Prey teach us about unlocking our own potential? Well, it turns out a whole lot more than you'd think. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful allegory for success, drawn straight from the animal kingdom. Using insights from Dr. Miles Monroe, we'll break down the 7 principles of the eagle, and these are lessons that could seriously change how you approach your own goals.
Dr. Miles Monroe kicks things off with this pretty stark reality check. Why the cemetery? Think about it, because it's literally filled with unfulfilled potential. Books that were never written, businesses that were never started, visions that just never saw the light of day. Our goal here is to make sure your potential doesn't get buried with you.
So the big question is, how do we tap into all that potential before it's too late? Well, it really starts with understanding that, kind of like a sculpture that's hidden inside a block of stone, our greatest abilities are often just lying there, dormant, waiting to be revealed.
There's this great little story about an eagle carver that illustrates this perfectly. An old man sees a plantation owner throwing away this big piece of wood, calling it junk. The carver asks for it, takes it home, and just starts hammering and chiseling away. He works, and after a while he frees this magnificent golden eagle from inside the wood. And get this, the same plantation owner who threw it away comes back and buys the eagle sculpture for $5,000. Talk about turning junk into treasure.
And that story just nails the core idea, doesn't it? You might feel like that piece of discarded wood sometimes. Maybe other people have even written you off. But the idea here is that inside you, there's an awesome, beautiful bird, an eagle, just waiting to be freed. The potential is absolutely there, even if nobody else can.
All right, let's get into our first principles, because to start carving out that inner eagle, you've got to have the right mindset, and you need an unwavering focus.
The first principle is all about embracing solitude. You will almost never ever see an eagle flying in a flight. It teaches us a huge lesson. If you're pursuing a great vision, you often have to be willing to walk, or, fly, a path that other people just won't understand.
And the contrast here is what's so interesting. You have pigeons, right? They flock together, they stay close to the ground, they seem to need the approval of the crowd. But eagles, they soar at altitudes that other birds just aren't built for. True success requires a willingness to leave the crowd behind.
So, flying high isn't enough. You also have to see where you're going. And that brings us to the second principle, the eagle's extraordinary power of vision. It's the perfect metaphor for having a sharp, unwavering focus on your goal.
Get this, an eagle can spit or a snake from up to 5 miles away. 5 miles! Despite all the other distractions happening around it, it locks onto its target and never takes its eyes off it until it strikes. That's the kind of focus we're talking about for achieving a long-distance goal.
Okay, so you've separated from the crowd and you have a clear vision. But what are you feeding that vision with? The next principle is all about the fuel you consume.
Eagles are hunters, not scavengers. This is so important. They don't eat dead things. They demand fresh meat. It applies directly to our mental diet. This leads to a pretty critical question. Are you feeding yourself like an eagle or a vulture? Vultures thrive on dead things, old news, gossip, the endless scroll of negativity online. That's all dead information. To maintain your altitude, you have to seek out live food, fresh ideas, new information, and positive motivation that actually lifts you up.
With focus and the right fuel, you're getting prepared. But what happens when you face a real test? This next set of principles is all about how we should approach adversity and trust.
Eagles don't just give their trust away freely, especially not when choosing a mate. They use a really rigorous process to test for a powerful lesson in not wasting your energy on people who just aren't serious.
So here's how it works. The female eagle flies miles up into the sky and drops a twig. The male has to dive and catch that twig before it can hit the ground. Then she repeats this, flying even higher each time. It's only when he proves his skill and his commitment again. It's a test before trust.
Now for a really counterintuitive idea. When a storm rolls in, most birds hide. The eagle, though, does something completely different. It flies directly towards the storm.
So why in the world would they do that? Because they're smart. They use the powerful winds of the storm, the very adversity that other birds are afraid of, to lift them higher. They actually soar above the clouds and rest on the force of the challenge. The takeaway is so clear. Your problems can literally become your promotion.
An eagle's journey isn't just about its own success. It's also about raising the next generation. The sixth principle is all about mentorship and investing the time to train others to fly.
To teach its young to fly, the parent eagle basically practices tough love. It starts making the comfortable nest uncomfortable, ripping out the soft lining to expose all the thorns underneath. Then it actually pushes the eaglets out of the nest thousands of feet in the other. Remember him? The one who was tested for commitment? Swoops down to catch them. And this process repeats over and over until the eaglets are forced to discover their own wings and fly. It's tough, for sure, but it's absolutely necessary for growth.
And now, we've arrived at the final and maybe the most profound principle of all. This is the ultimate lesson in resilience. It's about the power to renew yourself even when you feel old and completely worn out.
So, when an eagle gets old, its feathers become heavy and they actually start to hinder its flight. But it doesn't just give up. Instead, it begins this painful but necessary process of total renewal.
The eagle flies to a high, isolated spot on a mountain, and there, it painstakingly plucks out every single one of its old feathers. It then has to wait, totally bare and vulnerable, for new feathers to grow. When they do, it emerges renewed, with a stronger set of wings, ready to fly again. This is such a powerful metaphor for letting go of the old baggage that's holding you back.
And this quote just captures the promise of that whole renewal process perfectly. After a period of waiting, of being vulnerable, and trusting the process, you will regain your strength and find you can soar even higher than before.
So, as we wrap this up, here's the question to take with you. Looking at the challenges you're facing in your life right now, which one will you stop running from? What storm in your life will you decide to fly into and use to lift yourself to a whole new altitude?
Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea, one that kind of flips our whole culture's obsession with success on its head. It's all about choosing faithfulness over fame. And you'll see how making that one shift can quiet down so much of our anxiety and really light up our true purpose. So let's get right into it. So let me just start by asking you a really direct question. And I want you to be honest with yourself here. What has worry ever actually solved for you? Seriously, think about all the time you've spent, maybe late at night, just turning a problem over and over in your mind. Did it ever fix it? The truth is, worry talks a big game, but it never delivers a solution.
Yeah, it's pretty clear it hasn't solved much of anything, right? Worry is just, it's noise. It's this loud, obnoxious chatter in our heads that tricks us into thinking we're being productive. But really, it's just a thief, stealing our peace and our time.
You know, this isn't some new age idea. This exact question was asked 2,000 years ago, and the answer is still exactly the same. Worry doesn't add a single thing to your life. It only takes. It drains your energy, it kills your creativity, and it steals your joy. It literally only subtracts. I mean, just look at the two paths you can take here. It's a night and day difference. On one side, worry just sucks the life right out of you. It makes your problems look like massive, unclimbable mountains. But wow, that's like rocket fuel for your heart. It magnifies and brings this incredible sense of peace and clarity. You get to And we have to be clear, worry isn't just a bad mood. It's actually dangerous. It's a spiritual distraction that completely paralyzes you. Think about the Israelites standing at the edge of the Red Sea. They got so worried they actually said it would be better to go back to being slaves in Egypt. That's what worry does. It's so twisted, it can convince you that your cage is safer than your freedom.
Okay, so if we're going to tune out all that noise from worry, what do we replace it with? Well, that brings us to our next big idea. And it means we have to completely redefine what success even looks like.
From the time we're little kids, the world is constantly shouting this one question at us, right? Who's number one? Who's the best, the fastest, the richest? It's this never-ending race, this constant competition to climb to the top of some scoreboard that's always changing anyway. But God, He's not even looking at that scoreboard. He's